So next up, we have a presentation about serial management, KBART Autoholdings or manual load. So this is from the staff at the University of New South Wales who have been investigating the newer offerings in the area of KBART Autoholdings recently. We've got Bree, Cavangah and Julia Chen from UNSW Library with us to talk about their findings. I'll just introduce them while we get them all ready. Bree Cavangah is a senior team member with the Electronic Resources Unit at the UNSW Library. A self-proclaimed data nerd, she has championed the KBART loading process since the library implemented it in 2021. She is passionate about working with and creating the highest quality data and has enjoyed seeing how far KBART has come in the last few years. And Julia Chen is a senior team member of the Electronic Resources Unit at UNSW Library and has many years of experience in the areas of digital and electronic resource management using Ex Libris products. Recently, Julia has been investigating auto holdings for streamlining management and updating of electronic holdings, in contrast to previous manual processes. Thank you and look forward to hearing about your experiences.
Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Julia. My colleague Bree and I are here to talk about two different methods to manage serial in ELMA, auto holdings and manual load. Before our presentation, we would like to acknowledge Badigal people that are traditional custodians of this land where we are presenting from today. We would also like to pay our respects to elders, both past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are present here. Bree and I are both senior team members with Electronic Resource Unit at the University of New South Wales. Today, I'm going to talk about how we use auto holding, manage selected e-journal collections. And Bree will talk about journal collections managed by a manual KBART load and how do we make a decision for a collection. KBART. What is KBART? KBART is a data standard that facilitates the transfer of holding metadata from content providers to libraries. KBART files are retrieved from publisher or vendor. No matter we are using auto holding or manual load, both ways we are using KBART file. KBART enables us to get up-to-date and accurate data regarding our journal subscription directly from the publisher or vendor. When we're using KBART, we don't have to rely on the accuracy of the community zoo coverage dates, as it overrides the community zoo coverage date and replace them with local coverage dates that are specific to what we have subscribed to. The table on the screen on the right side shows the standard format of a KBART file. We may all heard auto holding. Auto holding is the automatically upload of electronic holdings from publisher regarding an institution's electronic holding. This automated process is designed to eliminate manual interaction when maintaining library holdings. We, at UNSW Library, we use auto holding process only for series, not for monograph. Ex Libris current provide is 6 auto holding journal collections. As outlined on the screen, we have set up auto holding to run on Springer, Elsevier, Ovi, and Wiley. Our library utilizes the auto holding functionality to automatically activate and update our journal titles and portfolios. To set up an auto-holding process, our team work with system admin team and publisher to set up this integration profile in Elma. And then we activate the auto-holding community Zoom collection. At UNSW, when we run auto-holding job for the first time, we compare the report received with previous collection we were using. This tells us whether the KBART data is high quality or not. Therefore, whether we utilize auto-holding or not. And then going forward with future auto-holding job run, we just receive report after the job complete. And then we check no action entry. For example, we check duplicate MMSID found and invalid SSN. Any of these fix or change, we have to make manually or use portfolio loader. Ex Libris designs this auto-holding process to run daily or weekly, depending on our provider. As our journal holding are quite stable, so we run auto-holding annually after grace period expired. We don't expect KBART data to be 100% accurate. However, since we have implemented auto-holding at UNSW, we have noticed a decrease in the number of reports regarding incorrect holding statements, such as incorrect coverage dates or title no longer held by UNSW. If we receive a report, we manually update the portfolio as we need. On the screen is a visual representation of how the auto-holding process works. And now I will pass our Bree to talk about the manual holding process.
As I very coolly slide onto the screen here. So hi everyone, I'm Bree, and I'll be briefly going over the process of manually loading a KBART file into Alma, some things I'm looking out for when it comes to the data, and how we decide which method to use using Project Muse as a case study. So what's the difference with a manual load? So the main difference is that we need to seek out the KBART file from the vendors or publishers directly, and usually we get this via an administrative login. We then need to upload the KBART file via the portfolio loader as an Excel file, and KBART has been an accepted format in the portfolio loader for a couple of years now. I used to have to reformat a KBART file into the standard Alma template, which was a bit of a nightmare, possible but tricky. Another big difference is that we receive an error and warning report before the job is actually completed. With auto holdings, as Julia mentioned, we receive it after the job has been completed. We currently manually load KBART files for the 5 collections you see there on the screen, and this is done at the same time we run the auto holdings job. So once a year around March or April, when any grace period we may have tends to expire. We did hold off switching Tel and Francis journals to auto holdings this year, and we will implement it next year to allow for any issues or bugs to be ironed out. So what are some of the things I'm looking for in a KBART file when running a manual load? So whilst KBART is a standard, data quality is not consistent across vendors or publishers. So when it comes to quality data, here's a few things that I'm looking out for. So I'm looking for valid ISSNs. So this mostly involves running an eye over them to make sure they look okay. Like for example, they have all 8 digits and that there is at least one ISSN either in the print or the online identifier column. I'm also checking that the coverage dates are complete and thorough. For example, last year, the Oxford University Press KBART file had around 80% of the journals missing a start date. Alma obviously cannot read a blank start date, and as such, like that file was entirely useless for us. But OUP have, of course, since rectified that problem. I'm also looking for accurate title history. So some publishers do not accurately represent journal title history in their files, and they include all coverage dates under the current name and ISSN. That's obviously poorly presented data and is not very library friendly. There's also a few things I'm doing to the data itself to help improve its quality before it hits ALMA. So one of the first things I'm doing is removing all of the URL data. So if URLs are left in the file, they will become an override in the portfolio. And this can negatively impact CDI records and will not take into account any CZ updates that come through to the linking. I'm also looking to remove any open access titles if I can. So removing open access titles is not at all necessary. However, I like to remove them where they are easily identifiable to avoid portfolio duplication. This is because most, if not all, open access journal titles are usually available via another community zone collection, such as DOAJ. I'm also ensuring volume and issue numbers are valid. So ALMA can't read volume and issue numbers that start with a 0. So for example, we have volume 03 and issue 01. They will need to be updated to remove those zeros so that they're just volume 3, issue 1. So if there is a platform or product that is available for either order holding or manual load, what do we choose? So it seems the easy answer would be to always use order holdings, but this isn't necessarily the case. So here are some of the things that we're considering. So we're looking at the size of the collection. So anything over 1,000 titles is most suited to be managed via order holdings. We're looking at the quality of the data. So manual loads allow us to assess the quality ahead of time before anything ugly ends up in ALMA. Can we acquire an institutional specific KBART file? That's something that's really important. The time required that's going to be spent on either method, but that can relate back to the quality of the data and the size of the collection. And sometimes it's just down to individual and team decision. It can come down to preferences of that magnitude. So looking at a specific example of UNSW going through this process, we've got Project Muse. So Project Muse is currently available for order holdings, but could also be done manually. So what did we look at when deciding whether to maintain the Project Muse holdings automatically or manually? So taking into account the points from the previous slide, we can see how Project Muse fits into these. So if we look at the size of the collection, we have access to 256 titles. If we look at the quality of the data, it's high quality. So there's no required fields missing, and we can take out the open access titles. Also valid ISSNs, thorough coverage dates, accurate title history, all good stuff we want to see. We can get an institutional specific file via the admin login. The time spent would be low for either manual load or order holdings. And again, that can come down to the size of the collection, the quality of the data. So if we do have a look at all of these things, and this was up to your institution, what would you guys choose? So I won't actually leave it with you for very long because either is obviously a very, very, very valid choice. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide what works best for your institution. So how we at UNSW chose which method ultimately came down to librarian or team discretion. We did decide to go the manual route, and this is for a few reasons. So one of the biggest ones is that we wanted to keep the workload balance between Julia and myself. At the moment, Julia handles 4 large collections with the order holdings process, with TNF to come next year, and running Project Muse as a manual load evens out the workload between us. Project Muse also has a very small number of titles in the grand scheme of things and high quality data, so there's not much additional labor required on my end. And because it is such a small collection, any errors or warnings are easily dealt with on that smaller scale. Also with using a manual load, we do have more freedom to manipulate the data how we like. So for example, we can take out the open access titles to avoid any duplication, but that is something that's very specific to what I like to do, as I can be a bit OCD when it comes to any data. And one last thing before we wrap up, some hot off the press information, if you will, is that Sage journals will be available for order holdings come August, but that's tentative, of course. And hopefully this presentation has given you some things to think about when it comes to how you'll maintain your holdings going forward. So thank you, everybody. We'll see if there's any questions that anybody has. Otherwise, we're all good.
Thank you very much. We do have a few quick questions before we move on to the next presentation. So Emma asks, are your manual updates overwritten when the next auto holdings job is run?
Yes, they absolutely are. Yes.
Yep, cool. Joanne asks, what do you do to ensure accurate title history?
Honestly, a lot of that just comes down to spot checking, unfortunately. That is something that I do, again, just because I'm a bit OCD about it. And as you run through and you do it year over year, you kind of tend to notice which publishers do a better job at presenting their data than others.
Yep, definitely. And Catherine says, apologies if I missed this, multitasking, but what was your decision process behind only using this process for serials and not monographs? We found that using auto holdings for monographs means we have to have a single collection for all access models. The alternative is having duplicate portfolios if we want multiple collections to track owned titles versus subscription titles.
Totally. So our thing is, and I suppose us at UNSW might do this a little differently, is we manage pretty much all of our ebook collections locally. So we don't use the community zone for those holdings.
All right. Well, thank you again very much. That was really
very
great to hear through your processes there.
Perfect.
And we'll pass on to the next presentation now.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.